Jefferson High was known for two things: its towering brick walls and the iron grip of Mr. Whitman's math class. A stern white man in his late 50s with silver hair and thin-rimmed glasses, Mr. Whitman ran his classroom like a courtroom. No nonsense, no second chances, and definitely no patience for students who didn't meet his high standards that he had taught for over 30 years, and in that time, developed a reputation for singling students out, especially those he didn't expect much from. His tone was clipped, his gaze sharp, and his sarcasm sharper. Many students feared him. But some believed his standards had little to do with academics, and everything to do with where a student came from, or what they looked like. In the third row sat 14-year-old Tiana Brooks, a quiet black girl with a brilliant mind and a love for solving equations. She was raised by her mother, a nurse who worked double shifts to keep the lights on. Tiana didn't wear designer clothes or have expensive gadgets, but she carried something more powerful: potential. Still, she stayed out of the spotlight. She knew that being too loud, too smart, or too bold could put a target on her back. One cold Tuesday morning, Mr. Whitman wrote an advanced calculus-level problem on the board, something far beyond their grade. The kind of problem that made even the smartest students flinch. This, he said with a slight smirk, is what we call an impossible question. Way out of reach for most of you. Then he turned slowly and pointed. Tiana, let's see if you can even begin to understand it. The class fell into silence. Tiana looked up. Calm. Focused, she didn't say a word, but her mind was already working. As soon as Mr. Whitman called her name, the silence broke, not with encouragement, but with laughter. It started as a whisper, then spread like wildfire through the room. A few kids chuckled behind their hands. One boy in the back, Tyler, even muttered under his breath, "Yeah, like she can solve that." Mr. Whitman didn't stop them. In fact, the faint smirk on his face said enough. He wasn't testing Tiana to see her succeed. He wanted to prove a point, and it wasn't about math. Tiana felt the weight of their eyes, their judgment, and worst of all, their doubt. But she didn't shrink. Instead, she slowly stood up from her seat and walked toward the board. Her backpack slid off her shoulder and hit the floor with a soft thud. The room got quiet again, not out of respect, but curiosity. No one expected her to try, let alone solve it. Mr. Whitman leaned back against his desk, arms crossed. "Take your time," he said. "I'm sure this will be educational." Tiana glanced at the numbers. Her eyes moved quickly, scanning the structure of the problem. It was a trick question. Complex, yes, but solvable if you understood the logic behind it. And Tiana did. Not because anyone had taught her, but because she'd taught herself. Late at night, while her mother worked and the city hummed outside her bedroom window, Tiana studied. Online videos, math forums, old college textbooks from the library, she devoured it all. This wasn't new to her. It was familiar. And now, it was her turn. She picked up the marker. The same kids who laughed just moments ago were now holding their breath. Line by line, she started solving it, and the room began to shift. Tiana's hand moved confidently across the whiteboard, each stroke deliberate, each number placed with precision. She wasn't guessing, she was solving. And slowly, the smirks on her classmates' faces began to fade. Even Tyler, who had been seconds away from cracking another joke, sat back in his chair, his brow furrowed. Whispers started to ripple across the classroom. "Wait, is she actually getting it? No way, she's doing the steps right." Mr. Whitman didn't think she'd get past the first line. Mr. Whitman's arms uncrossed. His smirk was gone, replaced with something more complex. Confusion? Surprise? Maybe even concern. He stood up straight, watching closely now. He wasn't used to being wrong, and he definitely wasn't used to students like Tiana proving him wrong, especially in front of the entire class. Tiana reached the halfway point of the problem, paused for a split second, and then continued. Her fingers tapped lightly against the marker, a subtle rhythm that helped her think. This wasn't just math. This was her statement. A quiet declaration that she belonged, not just in that classroom, but at the top of it. Behind her, the class was completely silent now. No giggles. No sarcastic remarks. Just stunned focus. Even Mia, the class's top math student and one of Mr. Whitman's favorites, leaned forward with narrowed eyes. She was following along, trying to catch a mistake, but there wasn't one. Tiana's logic was clean, her execution flawless. Finally, she stopped. Her last equation was underlined twice for clarity. She stepped away from the board, placed the marker down gently on the tray, and turned around. All done, she said, calmly. The silence was deafening. That Mr. Whitman blinked, then approached the board slowly, checking each step. His lips tightened as his eyes followed her work, and then, he said nothing, because she was right. Mr. Whitman stared at the board longer than necessary. He went line by line, double and triple checking Tiana's work, as if searching, hoping for an error. But there wasn't one. The logic flowed perfectly, every calculation aligned. Her process wasn't just correct, it was advanced. He cleared his throat. Well, he muttered, that's one way to approach it. But everyone in the room knew the truth. Tiana hadn't just approached it, she had crushed it. She had solved a problem their teacher said was impossible, something meant to humiliate her. And she did it with the confidence and calm of someone who had been underestimated her entire life. The class didn't cheer. They didn't have to. Their silence was the loudest sound in the room. The looks exchanged between students said it all: shock, respect, and maybe even a bit of embarrassment. For themselves. For laughing. For doubting her in the first place. Tiana turned and walked back to her seat. Her heart was pounding in her chest, but she didn't let it show. She sat down slowly, eyes straight ahead, not giving anyone the satisfaction of seeing her smile. From the front of the room, Mr. Whitman tried to regain control. Well, moving on, but his voice didn't carry the same authority it usually did. The students were still processing what just happened. For once, he wasn't the smartest person in the room, and worse, he tried to use a student as a punchline and failed. Mia leaned over from her desk, her voice barely above a whisper. That was insane, she said. Where'd you learn that? Tiana finally allowed herself a small smile. Home, she replied. Just practice. And in that moment, she wasn't invisible anymore. She was undeniable. The bell rang, signaling the end of class, but nobody moved right away. It was as if the air in the room had thickened. Students slowly began packing up, stealing glances at Tiana as they did. Some looked impressed. Others looked guilty. But no one looked at her the same way they had an hour ago. Tiana rose quietly, slipping her notebook into her backpack. Mr. Whitman didn't say a word, not "good job," not "interesting work," not even a nod. He simply turned back to his desk, pretending to shuffle papers, his pride wounded and his authority shaken. As Tiana stepped into the hallway, a wave of murmurs followed her. Yo, did you see that? She made Whitman shut up. She's a genius or something. The hallway, once a blur of noise and chaos, now seemed to revolve around her. Students parted as she walked, not out of fear, but out of recognition. Tiana wasn't just the girl from the back row anymore, she was the girl who did the impossible, but not everyone was thrilled. Tyler leaned against a locker with his arms crossed, watching her pass. His jaw was tight, his eyes narrowed. Probably cheated somehow, he muttered to his friend. Bet she looked it up online. His words didn't carry much weight. Not anymore. Not after what everyone had seen. Tiana didn't react. She'd heard worse before. Besides, the voices that mattered now weren't doubting her, they were in AWE. As she walked toward her next class, she passed the trophy case in the hallway. It was filled with medals, certificates, and team photos. For years, she'd barely noticed it, but today, something felt different. For the first time, she wondered, what if her name could be in there too? Later that day, as the final bell rang and students scattered to buses and after-school clubs, Tiana stayed behind. Not because she wanted to, but because her curiosity got the better of her. She had heard that Mr. Whitman held office hours after school, but few students ever went, especially not after being embarrassed in front of him. Still, she wasn't done. Not with the math. Not with him. She stepped quietly into his classroom again. Mr. Whitman was at his desk, writing something on a yellow legal pad. When he looked up and saw her, his brows lifted in surprise. "Tiana," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Did you need something?" "I had a question," she said, standing at the front of the room. "About the problem from today. There's another way to solve it, using substitution instead of integration. I wanted to ask if that would have been valid." Mr. Whitman leaned back in his chair, studying her. It was a moment of hesitation, as if he hadn't expected her to care beyond proving him wrong. But now, she was here. Not gloating. Not angry. Just interested. "Well," he said slowly, "yes, substitution would have worked. Though it's more complex, and it wouldn't be expected at your level." "I tried it at home," Tiana said, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket. She laid it on his desk. "It gets the same result. I wanted to compare." Mr. Whitman unfolded the page and read. As he did, his expression changed, tightened, then softened. "He didn't say anything for a while. You're far ahead of this class," he finally admitted. "Why haven't you spoken up before?" Tiana shrugged. "No one really listened." He sat back, slowly nodding. "Well," he said, "I'm listening now." And for the first time, he actually meant it. The next morning, something unexpected happened. As Tiana walked into school, her name was already floating through the halls. But this time, it wasn't gossip, it was admiration. A student from another grade approached her at her locker. "Are you the girl who solved Mr. Whitman's problem?" Tiana nodded slowly, unsure of how to respond. "That was crazy," the student said. "I wish I could do that." It wasn't just a one-time comment. Word had traveled fast. In math club, her name was brought up. In the teacher's lounge, Mr. Whitman mentioned her, grudgingly but honestly. He told another teacher that he had underestimated someone extraordinary. By lunch, Tiana was invited to sit with Mia and a few other advanced students she'd never spoken to before. "Not out of pity, out of respect. We're starting a prep group for the math decathlon," Mia said. "You should definitely be on it. We need someone like you." Tiana blinked, surprised. She had always admired Mia's sharpness and how she commanded attention without arrogance. The idea of being seen as her equal, it was new territory. "Yeah," Mia added. "Honestly, I think you'd carry the whole team." Tiana hesitated. Part of her still didn't trust it. All her life, she had to work twice as hard to be seen half as much. But this time felt different. This time, she hadn't asked for recognition, she had earned it, and it came without strings. Back in class, Mr. Whitman handed her a sealed envelope. "I submitted your problem for the state competition's preliminary round," he said. "You're a candidate now." Tiana's eyes widened. That IT wasn't just about shutting people up anymore. Now, doors were opening. 2 days later, the principal's office called Tiana in during third period. At first, she thought she was in trouble. Her stomach flipped as she walked the halls, gripping her notebook like a shield. But when she opened the office door, she found not a lecture, but opportunity. Inside sat Principal Ramirez and a sharply dressed woman holding a clipboard. She stood and extended a hand. "Tiana Brooks? I'm Ms. Palmer, with the Jefferson County Academic Committee. I heard about what happened in Mr. Whitman's class, and I had to meet you." Tiana shook her hand, confused but intrigued. "We're reviewing candidates for a statewide academic spotlight feature," Ms. Palmer explained. "We want to highlight exceptional students, especially those who've overcome odds. Your name came up." Principal Ramirez smiled. "Several teachers submitted glowing notes about your problem-solving skills, initiative, and drive. We think you'd be perfect." Tiana sat slowly, heart pounding. "Can I ask," she said, "why now? I've been doing this kind of work for a while." Ms. Palmer nodded, her expression warm. "Sometimes, unfortunately, it takes a big moment to get people's attention. But what matters is what you do after they finally see you. They asked her about her goals, her favorite subjects, how she studied. Tiana told them about staying up late with library books, learning formulas on her own, and the way numbers felt like puzzles waiting to be solved. By the end of the meeting, Ms. Palmer was beaming. "We'd like to feature you in the Fall Academic Journal. It'll go out to every school district in the state." Tiana left the office in a daze. She had gone from invisible to undeniable, and now, people weren't just watching, they were listening. The following week, Tiana found herself walking into a TV studio. It wasn't something she'd ever imagined, especially not for math. But there she was, standing in front of a bright blue backdrop with the words, "Academic Spotlight," across it, a camera crew setting up in front of her. Her hands shook slightly, but not from fear. It was excitement. A month ago, she had been the girl nobody noticed. Now, she was about to speak in front of hundreds, maybe thousands. The thought was almost overwhelming that Ms. Palmer had arranged everything. Tiana was set to be interviewed by a popular local news anchor, to share her story on television. They wanted to know how a young black girl from a small neighborhood had conquered an impossible math problem and earned the respect of one of the toughest teachers in the district. "Just relax," Ms. Palmer said, offering her a gentle smile. "This is your moment." Tiana nodded, though her stomach was still twisting with nerves. They weren't just talking about math anymore. They were talking about everything: her perseverance, the late nights of studying, the obstacles that had always seemed in her way. This was bigger than any classroom. When the camera turned on, the anchor's voice was warm, welcoming. "Tiana, we've heard so much about your incredible achievement in math," he said. "But we also understand there's a much bigger story behind it. Tell us about your journey." Tiana's mind raced. She had never been the type to overshare, but now she found herself speaking with ease. She talked about her life with her mom and grandmother, how they always supported her even when they didn't always understand her passion for numbers. She mentioned the long nights with textbooks, and the frustration of being underestimated, especially by Mr. Whitman, who had tested her in the most public way possible. "It wasn't just about proving him wrong," Tiana said, her voice steady. "It was about proving to myself that I could do it. That my story mattered." The anchor nodded, clearly impressed. "And now, here you are, an inspiration for so many others. What advice would you give to students who might feel overlooked or held back?" Tiana smiled, her confidence growing with every word. "Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do. Just keep going, even when they don't see your potential. Eventually, you'll show them, and yourself, what you're really made of." Tiana's interview aired the following week, and she became an overnight sensation. The clip spread across social media, with people commenting on how inspiring her words were. Local news stations ran replays, and teachers from other schools called her an example of resilience and hard work. Even students from other districts reached out, sharing their admiration and how her story gave them the courage to pursue their dreams, no matter the obstacles. Tiana had become more than just a math whiz. She was a symbol of breaking barriers, of challenging the expectations placed on her because of where she came from or the color of her skin. The week after the interview, Tiana found herself walking into a meeting with the district's Board of Education. Ms. Palmer had set it up as part of a follow-up from the Spotlight feature. When she entered the room, the faces of influential educators and administrators greeted her, some of them even applauding. "Thank you for sharing your story with us," one of the board members said. "We're incredibly impressed by what you've accomplished, and we want to make sure students like you have every opportunity to succeed. We've been discussing how we can create more programs for students who show promise in STEM fields, especially those who've overcome adversity." Tiana couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had always been a quiet force, never seeking attention, but now, everything was changing. Her struggle, her journey, it was now seen as a stepping stone for others. "We'd like you to help us create a mentorship program," Ms. Palmer said, smiling. "To inspire others just like you." Tiana felt her heart swell. For so long, she had felt like she was navigating the world alone, but now, it was clear that her experience mattered, and it was paving the way for something much bigger than herself. When she left the meeting, she wasn't just walking down the hallway of Jefferson High anymore. She was walking toward a future where the only limits were the ones she set for herself. And for the first time, Tiana Brooks knew that there were no limits. Tiana's journey is a reminder that no matter where you start, or who tries to hold you back, your potential is limitless. If you've ever felt underestimated or invisible, remember that with determination, resilience, and the belief in yourself, you can break through any barrier. Now, it's your turn to share your story, to step into the spotlight and show the world what you're capable of. If you're ready to challenge the impossible and inspire others along the way, don't wait for permission, create your own path, join the movement. Share your story. You never know who you might inspire, or how your story could change the world. Like, share, and comment below if Tiana's journey inspired you to believe in yourself and your dreams.